interested to focus upon is that along with all of your individual queries and questions, one of the reasons why we want to get together tonight and kind of consolidate our plans is to be able to be in that mindset where each of us with our individual capacities and with our individual strengths, right? The focus is on strengths, not limitations. We try to maximize the best possible outcome for the test day on Saturday. 2 p.m. to 3:40 p.m., 100 minutes, right? Can be a lot of time if you are planned well. So that is one of the major focal areas which I want to highlight to start off today's session by essentially providing you with like a map of how we go about planning our test day, our test format, right? So firstly, I would like to start off with your planning right from tonight. By tonight, I mean we are at this moment 7:16 p.m. Indian Standard Time, and we are looking forward to spending tonight and then possibly tomorrow, and then be ready on Saturday by say noon time onwards for our exam day, right? So first and foremost, I would like to share a little sort of a instruction, you might call it, based on my experience of mentoring and guiding students specifically for exams like TISSNET. And by TISSNET, I mean TISSNET, not exams like CAT. I am talking of social science entrances. And I can tell you that what I would recommend for all of you is that tonight, tomorrow, and day after in the morning, based, depending on how early you wake up, irrespective, right? You have to maintain a very strong, optimistic approach towards Saturday, come what may, right? All of us over the last 1 year with the pandemic has seen certain lows in all of our lives, which we may not have imagined earlier. None of our textbooks, none of our general knowledge, none of our mathematics ever, none of our policies, none of our governments ever thought of what we experienced last year, right? And by experience, we mean that everything which shrunk us through brought us to a low economically, socially, mentally, physically. So the only way we can now look forward is to go higher and rise up. Saturday is one of those days when you start doing it, if you have not yet done earlier, right? So this mindset should be the one where you should be really excited about. And excitement is just not about hearing me out saying that be excited. Excitement should be palpable in you. So the first thing that I want to request all of you is, if your bandwidth allows, please switch on your videos for a couple of seconds and smile at me, please. If that's a little request that everyone can kindly maintain, because at the end of the day, an exam is a lot about your mindset. Thank you, Shasha. Thank you, Tanvi. I think you can just smile, you can laugh, you can take out your teeth, just relax. There is so much of, I would say, stress release when you just smile. I mean, even if you fake it, it's still de-stressing. If you'll see the actors, if you have, thank you, Kanad. I'm still waiting for a lot of the other test takers. Thank you, Shravya, Sadaf. Smile, smile. I mean, that's what we have been all created to smile, to express, to emote, right? Even if it is a fake one, doesn't matter. You can do it well. So just do that and maintain that stance, because it's very important that within your own capacities, right, you really extract the maximum out of it. None of us, including me, are absolute in terms of a strength or potential ever. Remember this, right? It is a relative measure. Your cutoffs are relative, they are not absolute. You see percentiles in all other exams, right? Which is again a relative thing, right? So there is nothing absolute in this world, even if you remember little bit of physics from your earlier school days, that even rest and motion are not absolute terms in our lives, right? So thank you so much for your participation to really pay heed to my request of smiling. And I don't mind if you keep smiling and keep your videos on. I love your virtual background, Kanad. I mean, it's really very interstellar and very, very positive. Thank you for also bringing that perspective into the session. So I hope everyone can also view my screen, right? Which I have shared. There's a whiteboard. Yeah, great. If anyone has any problems, please let me know, or at the most what you can do is if there is too much of a trouble, you can simply log out and log back in. I will add you back. So if I come across, just a minute, I think, yeah, to my screen, which I think someone is annotating. So if I kindly move this, yeah. So the first important thing would be to maximize our score, right? That we would be focusing on. So the TISSNET is 100 marks, 100 questions, 100 minutes exam, right? I mean, we usually talk about alliteration with alphabets or letters in English. We have alliteration with the word 100, right? So we will try our 100% to maximize our score in the TISSNET given the circumstances, right? So when I come to the TISSNET exam and I look into the 3 sections and I come to say section 1, suppose, and say section 1 is GK of 40 questions. Okay. Then suppose let me take section 2, which is mathematics, just shorten it, maths plus LR. I hope everyone understands short forms, logical reasoning, plus data interpretation. That again has like 30 questions. Now, I would like to draw your attention to the fact that over the years, at least last 7-8 years with the TISSNET exam, what I have noticed closely is that earlier TISS had a higher proportion of maths questions, core maths questions. Now the core maths questions, like which are like direct in nature, like calculate the percentage, calculate the average, calculate the mean proportion, calculate say the ratio, or say calculate the time, calculate the distance, such questions which I call core math questions. The percentage of core maths question in the 30 marks or 30 question section has reduced. So if that is a good news for some of you, factor that into consideration also. So I'll just help you out with the core maths section under core maths question under section 2 to be anywhere hovering between, let me tell you, 11 to say, I would say, under usual circumstances, 11 to 18 questions from core maths, okay? And then if I talk of DI, I would say it would be anywhere between, say minimum of, I would say 5 questions to some years, they have given out to 10 questions, right? And LR would be somewhere around, say, a minimum of 5 questions to 8 questions, right? So this is your section 2, right? I'll come to GK also, which we have been discussing a lot. In GK, keeping in mind social science entrance test, things connected to Indian Constitution, government, social issues, schemes, policies. These are certain questions which are always constants in our social science entrances across the country. I mean, and possibly anywhere in the world, because they form the foundation stone for sure, right? So that is my GK 40, the usual constants. And of course, like maybe in GK, certain things connected with health and environment. Next comes section 3, the last one, with your verbal ability of 30 questions. And if I divide the verbal ability part, usually what we have seen, reading comprehension or comprehension, there will be like, say, 5 questions. Now, these 5 questions in some years, it has come from just one single passage. Some years it has come from 2 or 3 or more passages with a short passage or even a long passage followed by only one question, right? So I think one of you who asked that question of reading comprehension, I'll come to that part with this discussion. Comprehension will have 5 questions. Then you have parajumbles or sentence rearrangements, which I hope you understand, where like 5 sentences or 4 sentences are given and you got to rearrange them, choose the most logically coherent and meaningful combination. Parajumbles will have like 5 questions. Antonym synonyms. Antonyms, synonyms, and even analogies. That could vary, like, it differs from year to year. I would say 5 to 10 questions. Fill in the blanks. Again, like 5 questions maybe. Then we have sentence error correction. Again, I would say like 5 questions maybe. And then there is what we call the miscellaneous or the verbal reasoning part, which sometimes comes in the verbal reasoning section, sometimes it does not come. That will be also 5 questions, right? So based on these parts that I am showing all of you, we would like to now try and understand, based on your individual capacity, how do we, number one, budget our time? How do we distribute our time, our starting points, our distribution of attempts across the sections? And second, we will also like to understand how we identify our strengths, which is also going to be very important. So if I help you understand, which I've been always talking about in all our sessions, is that on exam day, you start with questions with which you are most comfortable with. On exam day, you start with questions that you are most comfortable with. So of these sections, you will know the best, right? Or you will have the best estimation or approximation from where to start off with, right? So that is going to be your first identification when it comes to the exam day, right? The second important thing, which I always keep saying, especially in an exam like TISSNET, is that Do not ever in your mind settle for any uh, score which you feel is comfortable for you. Never. Even if you feel that, okay, the stream that I am targeting, it had a pretty quote unquote low cutoff last year. So you will be very happy, if you do questions very slowly, taking your time, trying to evaluate questions, experimenting on the test day, trying to create your own mathematical concepts on the test day. Do not ever waste your resources in that manner. You have no guarantee that the cutoffs will be the same this year for that specific course. So you have to maximize in the given time, you have to maximize your number of attempts. Very important, right? That number of attempts have to be maximized. Now, the way you do that is the first 40 minutes, which I talk of, the first 40 minutes, very crucial. You should, your target should be that minimum 30 to 40 questions on your screen should be marked, should be marked. Now you may ask me, do they all have to be correct questions? What if I can't answer most of them? Well, you have to maximize on the possibility of being correct attempts. So that is the reason starting off with your strengths is going to be very crucial. And in any case, this section, for which, I think we have been wanting to spend sleepless nights, that is the GK section, which is definitely the yardstick section, by the way. And I'm telling you that this section's, the advantage of this section is, if you know it, you know it. If you don't know it, you don't know it. But 40 questions of GK, you should not take more than 10 minutes to mark. Not more than 10 minutes to mark. Okay. All the 40 questions. How long will it take to mark a question? 10 minutes means 600 seconds. I'm allotting 15 seconds per question. 15 seconds. You count 1 to 15. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So can't you feel that the time I took to count, which is like 15 seconds approximately, is that not good enough for you to mark a GK question or to read a question and understand its answer? In most of the cases, it is, right? There will be questions which you will have possibly no clue about. So you will not be waiting for any intervention to happen later on that you will leave that question. So do not waste your time and go ahead marking those questions. So first 40 minutes, I would like all of you to reach this milestone of 30 to 40 questions comfortably marked on your screen from wherever possible. And that has to be done very, very diligently. And to be able to do that, the first 5 minutes when you open your test on the screen or the test gets activated, it's very important that you go back and forth across the 100 questions to identify potential starting points and things which appear to be simple for you, right? So once you have achieved that in the remaining 60 minutes, with possibly the remaining 60 or 70 questions, that is the time you can afford to experiment. You can take your time on maths questions. You can take your time. People who ask me about verbal ability questions, where you are finding options to be very close, you need a little bit more time maybe to evaluate the most appropriate answer. In verbal ability questions, your answers are not quote unquote correct or incorrect. Verbal ability questions is more about being most appropriate. So So the participant who asked me this question, I will try to help you understand that when you are going through a reading comprehension passage and you are looking at a question, the first important criteria for you is to identify what type of question is it. Is it a direct question or is it an indirect question? A direct question means a question that is based on facts, based on prima facie trivia from the passage that you can simply lift and you can match it with the option given. The other possibility is the indirect question. So if I'm not mistaken, the one who asked me the question, indirect questions are the ones that usually give us trouble. In indirect questions, when it comes to reading comprehension, it's very important that we ask ourselves, what exactly is the question trying to evaluate through the passage? Is it connected, number one, to the central idea of the passage? Number two, is it connected to an assumption that led to the passage, right? Number three, is it connected to the conclusion of the passage by which the passage gets concluded? Number four, is it connected to the inference or the implication that we can gain via the passage? Number five, is it connected to points which might be related to increasing the strength or weakness of the passage? Reading comprehension, which is RC, is also looked at as CR, that is critical reasoning. So in critical reasoning type of questions, you will always find this difficulty in which the tie of two options or more options might happen. And that is exactly where your approximation of understanding the appropriateness based on the argument of the passage, based on the assumption of the passage, and based on the inference drawn is going to be very important. So what I would request the ones who might be facing these problems with, say, reading comprehension is, the only way you can improve on your ability to read and comprehend is to be able to draw a picture out of the passage. Drawing a picture means, if you are studying a passage, say, on child psychology, and the passage talks about child psychology and maybe a disorder connected with the child, which is more connected with their mental ability and growth. Suppose there's a passage on that format. It's very important to be able to picturize the main idea of the passage. And that ability of picturizing is primarily based on, as you read a line, use your imagination to visualize, use your imagination to associate with things around. Sometimes it becomes very difficult. Like there is a passage, say, on abstract art and philosophy. Okay. And suppose they're talking about Bono's 6 thinking caps or hats, something maybe which is very abstract. You have to still try and understand what is the practical utility of that extract. Because usually questions which are more connected with the application of the passage is where we face the difficulties. The other strategy would be that the one who asked me the question, if you have been able to identify that such a passage or such type of questions have consistently caused you trouble, then please do not prioritize that question, because that question is not going to be hundreds of them. There are going to be 3 or 4 of such questions maximum. Please do not prioritize that question in your attempts till you have covered all that you are more comfortable with, right? So it is not really a formula to be able to comprehend the passage well. It is more about how strongly you associate with it. Sometimes what happens, your personal interest and choices match with that of the passage, and you can immediately connect with it very strongly. Sometimes you cannot. Sometimes maybe there is a passage on quantum mechanics, and it can come. Like, don't expect that a social science entrance may not give you such a passage. They can just give you such a passage to understand your uh, ability to organize your thoughts. So quantum mechanics, the sound of it might, make a lot of us repel. So don't let the reputation of the topic of the passage or its history or its relationship with you hamper your sense of reasoning. Most of the times, as human beings, when we are attempting verbal reasoning and logical reasoning questions, knowingly or unknowingly, we are governed and influenced a lot by external factors. Like, say, logical reasoning question. A question on statement and conclusion is given. Okay. And so many times we see students saying that, but sir, this statement is talking about women empowerment. But recently we saw with the pandemic, so many women was pushed back to poverty. Then how is this true? Now, the point is that in a logical reasoning question, even in a verbal reasoning question, including comprehension, you cannot step out of the premise. Even if you know, even if you're very well read, that women are faced or are facing much more problems than males due to the pandemic, if the passage is talking about women empowerment, don't nullify its statement with the general knowledge of yours. Never, because that is not a general knowledge question. That is a reasoning question based on simple logic that is derived from the premise of the passage. Premise is like the four walls. Right now, I'm in my room. I cannot go out. And that is how a premise is. You cannot go out of your logical reasoning thinking. So within that premise, you have to evaluate. You have to argue. You have to identify assumption, main idea, central idea. You have to identify the conclusion. You have to identify the impact, implication. You might want to understand what could be the most suitable title to the passage. A suitable title, of course, sums up the central idea best, right? Say, for example, if you all of you have seen the movie Three Idiots, the movie was named Three Idiots because you know the Three Idiots, right? The movie was not called The Apple. So a movie is titled in such a way, or a book is also titled in such a way that it amplifies the central idea or the plot of the ethos of the passage. So that is where your association while reading is going to be very important. So that is part of the verbal ability understanding which I want to highlight. The other point which I want to focus upon is, before we move to some GK discussions and taking more of your queries, is if you look at the section 2 part of core maths, which is 11 to 18 questions, we have noticed that many a times students, a lot of them might be quite strong in the core math section. You might be strong because you must have or may have given an exam like CAT this year. Quite naturally, that aligns you pretty comfortably with the core math type of questions in the TISSNET for sure. So you should try to then exploit those parts or those type of questions more. By core math, I mean no data, no interpretation, no logic, but simple calculation based on a word problem that is given to you. Simple and compound interest, average, ratio proportion, time and distance, time and work, percentage calculation, profit and loss discount calculation, uh, or even like your basic application of set theory based on a Venn diagram, maybe those type of questions, right? So you should try to exploit that. And people who are comfortable with core math, also we see them pretty comfortable with the DI part too. So you see at least 16 questions from this section 2 is within your grip. So if your strength lies in these areas, so those 16 to 20 questions must be identified by you in the first opening 5 to 6 minutes, right? Along with the questions from GK, along with the questions from verbal ability. Now, suppose you are not very comfortable with maths and historically you have not been in very good terms with mathematics. We find many of you, at least in the TISSNET format, to be pretty comfortable with the LR part. And a lot of you who we see may not be so comfortable with maths, if any of you disagree with my points, please raise your voice. We find that you try to compensate with your verbal ability section, right? So this LR part is for those who are not at all comfortable with maths. You don't find it to be very confident to start off with maths, or it does not excite you as much. You know, you have to pass through it somehow. You're trying to look forward to that on Saturday. So then identify these LR questions from the section 2 part. Because unlike the LR of other exams like the MBA entrances of CAT and ZAT, where LR turns out to be more difficult than the maths part, in TISSNET, thankfully, as of now, and it will be the same on Saturday too, quite surely, the LR questions are doable, even without prior knowledge, simply sticking to your reasoning abilities and trying to use the information that is given. LR is a lot about how well you have used and you have spotted the information in the question. Data interpretation is also partly that, but that information requires some interpretation using mathematical operations, which LR does not usually require, save and except some questions which may come from number series, where a term is missing and you have to identify what could fit into that missing term, right? So as of now, I would like to ask all of you what I shared with you. Is it clear? If you have any queries, please ask so that we can move forward. Any other questions? Please ask. Any specific questions with the points that I discussed and I raised? Ashish, mathematics is a completely separate section. Mathematics, LR, DI, they are one section. English is another section, and then followed by GK. That is the other section.
But last paper, it included in English section only, right?
No, not at all. They were all separate. Did you appear for last year's exam?
No, 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 no.
No. They're all
Actually, last year
separated out
aspirants.
section. They can never mix. No. This is again one point I would like to please tell all of you that please refer to the TISS official website. Don't listen to anyone, including me. TISS official website clearly mentions 3 sections, and that has been the format for the last 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years in TISSNET.
Okay, thank you, sir.
So whoever tells you whatever, please don't get misguided or dissuaded 36 hours before the exam. Just keep your focus from authentic sources. So Tanvi, last year's paper was different. You were talking of LR was not included much. Now the point is that you have to realize what are you calling LR questions, right? LR and even verbal reasoning, including say critical reasoning, reading comprehension, statement and conclusion, statement and assumption, syllogisms, they have a lot of overlaps between being called as verbal reasoning also, and some books even call it logical reasoning. So that is the reason why they are kind of contained in the same section some years, and we may not be able to identify them because we are possibly referring to a certain textbook where under LR certain topics have been mentioned, right? So if you go to, say, for example, the TISS website, they do not talk of uh, a, a, a topic like probability. Okay. They do not talk of a topic like permutation combination. they consider that to be part of statistics. Now, in some textbooks, statistics deals with measures of central tendency, mean, median, mode, right? Covariance, standard deviation, and that's it. And then it goes to regression and so on and so forth. Out of which mean, median, mode, standard deviation is the most important parts of our syllabus. They are the ones that's required. But the point remains that statistics, when they call it basic statistics, they are referring to statistics that is used in social science. It is of class 10th standards. The syllabus is also of class 10th, but the topics included are which is connected to social science. So under statistics, probability is an extension of distribution. Okay, we call it probabilistic distribution, which is also part of statistics. So to know probability, you have to know the basics of the principles of counting, some basic application of permutation combination, and even prior to that, you have to understand some basics of set theory. So if you notice the syllabus, even on the TISS website, they have kept very broad terminologies, but these are included. However, don't be panicky about that you are not good with these topics that I've been talking of. The bulk of questions in mathematics over the years have been primarily from your arithmetic applications. Percentage, profit and loss, ratio and proportion, time and distance, time and work, mensuration, basic calculations of area, volume, perimeter, length, breadth, surface area, and so on and so forth. So that's essentially what is important for your mathematics, because if you are covered with those parts, you will be able to attempt most of these 11 to 18 questions that I am talking of, right? So the summary to this entire discussion, or the main point of this entire discussion as of now, is that please make a note that the first 40 minutes, minimum 30, if not 40 questions must be attempted on the paper, right? In the worst case scenario, what will happen? Suppose you cannot attempt any maths, any English, whatever it is, but you can mark the GK, right? Do not keep that GK till the last 5 minutes, when you know that, okay, I am left with just last 5 minutes. Let me just mark the rest parts of it. So Kanad, the main parts of maths, I think I will write these down. So numbers and their properties, like rational numbers, irrational numbers, and divisibility rules. Then percentage, profit and loss, ratio and proportion, average. Average also includes mean, median, mode. Simple and compound interest. Time and work. Time and distance. and calculation of area, volume, perimeter. These, I would say, would be the core, not core maths. Core maths topics also include your Venn diagrams, but I'll tell you the difference. Probability, trigonometry basics, just application of sine, cos, tan to calculate height and distance, permutation combination, set theory, of course. But what I mean to say is, over the years, usually the part of question, the topics which I mentioned out here, these are the ones which are definitely more popular, or they comprise consistently the questions over the years. Area, volume, perimeter, of course, they also are included. I forgot to add it. So that itself is, I think, quite wholesome in maths, but the basic applications of each of these would be required. Okay. So moving closing points, what I would like everyone to be aware of is that please do not ever think that what you know may not be sufficient. As we discussed right at the start of our session, you have to maximize. You have to maximize based on what you already know and what your strengths are. So one of the important things that we discussed, and I summarize once more for everyone, is that do not ever waste your time at the start of the paper, irrespective of what your target score could be. And do not ever have this in your head that if you attempt 60 questions, it will be good enough for you to get through a course which had a cutoff of 45 last year. You cannot get a guarantee to that. There is no guarantee. Cutoffs fluctuate every year. I have personally seen TISSNET, and I have trained students for TISSNET over a decade now. And it's a very difficult pattern to estimate, right? On top of it, we had a pandemic year last year, so we really don't know. Like compared to many other exams like a CAT or the earlier exams which happened during a time when the pandemic was still pretty potent across the country, many people might have not appeared for other exams and might be looking at TISSNET as one of their opportunities. So it's very difficult to gauge the level of competitiveness with any course per se. So never ever derogate or trivialize any of the 50 programs, I can tell you. There can be courses which might have cutoffs close to human resource management. I can assure you this year. So maximize on your attempts, first 30 to 40 minutes, 30 to 40 questions from all across, wherever possible, that you are partly to fully sure of, or even if you're not sure of with GK, get it marked within the first 40 minutes, so that in the remaining 60 minutes, you have the time to introspect and maybe, get more correct answers. So that is going to be an important aspect, because unlike an exam like CAT, you don't have so much time per question. In a CAT, if you are able to do 3 to 4 questions in the logical reasoning section, I believe you really go up very high in the ranks nowadays. but that is not the case in a TISSNET exam, right? So you have to really be at it, and you have to identify in the first 5 minutes your strengths, very crucially. The second thing is based on what we discussed in the chart out here. Identify your strengths. Is it core maths? Is it DI? Is it GK? Is it verbal ability? The most comfortable part across all of these sections that we have discussed and the subsections under each section should be the one that will be your starting point, right? And the secret to your success, remember, is to, at least from tonight onwards, what we did at the start of the session, to keep smiling, right? So if I can see once more to end the session, all of your smiling faces to round off the session. Come on, aspirants. Yes. Everyone. That enables your mind and brain to process better. When you are stressed, you are using a lot of parts of your mind, unnecessarily. It's not required, right, Kanad? Anurit, Shivank? So
Yes.
smile. I mean, never hesitate. And I mean, all of you look the most beautiful when you do that, right? And there is so much promise in it. And you can really, I can assure you that you can really maximize if you do that, because a brain is a truly mysterious organ whose true potential has to be tapped between 2 p.m. to 3:40 p.m. on Saturday. So be excited about it. There's no pressure. It's under your control, right? Once you do that, then you set your goals, set your platform for doing really well in the days ahead. So many students whom I have counseled over the years, mentored over the years, and I see them doing really well across different sectors, working with organizations where a lot of you might also want to be in, or being independent. They were like just like you, not too many years back, right? They all differed, but one common thing which I remember and recollect very clearly is the ones who really maximize their outcomes, they always smiled. So, like, when you ask me that what is that one strategy, sir, that really works, I can assure you that nothing else works other than smiling, because that enables your reasoning abilities and cognitive abilities to be the maximum. Also, very importantly, 2 p.m. to 3:40 p.m. is a non-conventional time for an exam. Don't spend tomorrow at least sleeping during that time, so that you feel a little sleepy that time. You should be at it. You should be excited. Um, Drink your tea or coffee or whatever pumps you up. We might compromise on our health factor for a couple of hours on that day. I don't want to promote anything which is unhealthy, but what I want to promote is very healthy ways of reasoning, very healthy ways of planning. Right, guys? I hope all of you are with me on this, right?
Yes, sir.
That's amazing.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Do not at all think anything beyond this. Focus on your strengths, optimize your plan, right? Enjoy the paper on Saturday. That's most important, right? And take it as one of the very exciting opportunities of the many that you will be getting, right? Great. Thank you so much for your time, for being here and sharing your thoughts, because based on your questions, I could frame my sessions for all of you. And really do well on Saturday. I'm sure all of you would. I'm very sure.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much,
All the best,
sir.
students.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Sir.
All the best. Do well. Do well. All the best. Bye bye. Good night. Take care.
Yes, bye bye.
Thank you, sir.
All
Thank you,
the
sir.
best.
Good
Do
night.
really well. Bye bye.
Good night, sir. Thank you so much
Good
again.
night. All the best.